Hello, I'm Stan Smith, Program Assistant for the Ohio State University Extension in Fairfield County. During the winter of 2013, I was invited to share information at the Ohio Forage and Grassland Council annual meeting about the successes we've experienced over the past decade or so growing oats for forage when they're planted in late summer or early fall. What follows is that presentation as it was offered live at the conference. Don't be alarmed that the slides don't necessarily match the conversation you will hear. In this case, the slides were started at the beginning of the presentation and allowed to rotate on a continuous loop.
Back in 2001, a good friend of mine, Kurt Stuyvesant, went to the Heart of America Grazing Conference and brought back the idea that we could grow oats after wheat, late in the summer. And so I want to give credit where credit is due because he brought that back, and we've got 12 years of demonstrations, observations. Unfortunately, we don't have any research yet, Mark. We need more, Mark, common sense research. But what I want to talk to you about for just a minute, many of you are growing crops. The place where oats fit the best are after wheat. And at the end of this, I'm going to challenge you to crunch the numbers, run a budget on getting wheat back into the rotation, harvesting it now, typically the end of June or 1st of July, depending on where you're located, taking the time that it takes to harvest the straw that is now consistently valued for 2 years, not just this year, but for 2 years at $150 a ton or better. Haul the manure from those pits or barn areas that you're typically waiting until corn silage or soybeans come off, and then plant oats the 1st of August. So basically what we've done, and we've tried it every way imaginable. You see all kinds of dates up here, all kinds of different seeding rates. We've looked at different nitrogen rates. And what we've found works the best is if we seed oats the 1st of August, we need to control any weeds that are there. If you've still got some perennial weeds, an application of glyphosate. If there's volunteer wheat there, we would encourage you to destroy it. Get oats. Typically, we're using bin run feed oats that originate in Canada. Seeding costs this year were less than $17 per acre. We've looked at different nitrogen rates, and we think that 40 pounds per acre is the best rate. We actually hurt yields in a demonstration plot we did a few years ago with higher rates of nitrogen. We advocate oats for a variety of reasons. Seed costs are very reasonable. They're very consistent with what they do. They adapt well to significant rainfall like we had in 2011 and very little rainfall like we had in 2012. It seems that timely rain, not volumes, but timely rain is a factor in getting them to produce. When we allow them 75 days plus or minus to grow, what we're finding is that we are consistently yielding 3 tons or more per acre, even in this year. Bob, the average perennial mixed hay yield in Ohio is still a tick less than 3 tons per acre. Now think about that. We're looking at a single harvest, not a harvest that we get stressed with in a typical Ohio May. We're not looking at having to make it again. We're not looking at having to put multiple applications of nitrogen on it. For the last 12 years, we've had a wide range of yields based on a wide range of planting dates and a wide range of weather. But the fact is, we are consistently producing as much tonnage of similar quality as what most of our Ohio producers are on the average with mixed hays. So as I said a minute ago, I would challenge you to run the budget. I don't remember the number now, maybe Mark does, but some time ago Jim Berline shared with us the enhancement of all three crops when we put a third crop in the rotation. So a number of opportunities. A rotation that has a third crop in it, relatively inexpensive crop to grow, one that has been relatively fail-safe, one that allows a single harvest and certainly is very well adapted to grazing, and one that allows you to take the time it is necessary to get straw harvested and also provides an opportunity to put down some manure. We've had a lot of guys who needed forage desperately, so they pushed the envelope. They planted in July. It appears that the heat of July actually depresses yield. It's a whole different critter when we're looking at oats. We think about planting a corn crop as early as we can. We think about getting soybeans planted as early as we can. We're actually depressing yields when we rush planting. If you think about oats and the nature of the way they typically grow and where they're grown most abundantly, cooler temperatures seem to be.
Did you get lucky that year?
Well, the rains were very timely. We did get 3 ton in that situation. The thing we didn't have was necessarily high quality. Yeah, when we talk about averages, think about where average yields come from. We did harvest 3 tons. You notice we had some seed corn left over, and it got thrown into the box, and that's where the corn came from. That's not volunteer. That's corn, so for what it's worth, you can average it in. The first year that we did oats in 2002 was probably the marquee year. The Wolfingers planted oats the first week of August, applied, as I recall, 50 pounds of nitrogen. They began to graze the third week of November, and Bob worked with us a lot on quality samples with that. The estimate of yield based on hand samples that were dried and measured was actually 5 tons per acre that year. So take that for what it's worth. The neat thing is, though, that they literally started calving on those oats in March. They grazed all winter with the exception, if you'll remember 2002, we had about 2 or 3 feet of snow in February, a freak snowstorm, and so they basically pulled the cows into nothing but hay for about 3 weeks until the snow melted, put the cows back out, and I think there's a picture in here somewhere, and grazed until about the 20th of March when they ran out of oats then. But they went out, and bless his heart, Robert moved string every day, gave them a strip all the way across the field that they were in. When it froze, he took a drill, electric drill, to make the holes for the pins that were in the plastic posts, and grazed all winter long. Yeah, that I think is the field. No, that's not. That was taken in 2006. But as you can see, a variety of different results. You see seed heads in a lot of these fields. For the most part, those do not have viable grain in them. And for the most part, those fields with seed heads were planted in July. The ones that you saw, well, this is aerial seeding. Not a lot of growth. We've not been consistently successful at all with aerial seeding. The only crop that we've found that we're successful with consistently is cereal rye. The year that aerial seeding worked very well was the year Katrina came through the end of August. And there might be a picture from that year in here. But other than that, we don't do well if we don't get significant rainfall to get the oats germinated. That's the one from 2002. And we don't do well in shade. We've had some fellows harvest them as dry oats late in December. Up in Canada, we found some people who spray them with Roundup, let them dry standing, and then if they get a few days of very frozen weather, we'll go in and mow them, rake them, and bale them all in a couple of days. We did that once in Fairfield County. They didn't spray them, they let them die. Oats continue to grow typically around this part of the state almost always until after Thanksgiving. This year they died about the third week of December when it got real cold. They don't suffer from frost. Takes something in the mid to lower 20s for several hours to kill an oat. They're very slow to dry. They're very difficult to bale as dry hay. Very difficult. And you look at them as a grass, especially if you bale them a little bit immature to harvest a little better quality. And I've seen several guys who have rushed it, got impatient, thought it was dry, and it wasn't cured. It would take, in a typical October through the central part of Ohio, it would take at least 2 weeks to cure them. I would discourage dry baling, but it's an alternative. We had a fellow in Auglaize County this year who rented a field, who paid to have everything done custom. There might be a slide here with that. And he paid to have them harvested, chopped, and bagged. And based on his yield, he had $102 per ton without land costs. He had 13% protein. So he harvested them early enough. They had pretty good quality. Paid to have everything done. There it is. You'll see that they weren't going in head yet. Those only grew for 75 days, 76 days. Planted in August, so they grew slowly enough that they didn't try to push seed heads. Very high quality feed. If he had taken away the harvest expenses, he'd have only had about $30 a ton invested. So if we can eliminate harvest, certainly the profitability is much better. But we're looking at one harvest here instead of perhaps 3 with mixed hay. If there's a question, I'd take it. If there's a comment, we'd... Okay. I think, and I don't understand the fermentation process exactly, but I think it is so cool that it's very difficult for them to go through that process. We wet wrapped oats just before Thanksgiving this year at home, and they've been very, very slow to ferment. They are actually still fermenting. They're excellent feed.
That doesn't hurt the feed value if it doesn't ferment.
No, it doesn't.
Great feed.
It's still excellent feed. And it's critical that I believe they are wrapped, or you go through the process of ensiling them to preserve the quality as long as you can. I have a good friend who thought he could get them baled dry in, it was about the end of October, and got impatient. And he thought they felt dry. Well, they were about 47% moisture, and they were a mess. The fellow in Auglaize County mowed those, let them lay for 6 days, and they were still almost too wet to chop. They were running 70% moisture. They're very slow to dry, but they had to get them because they were threatening rain for the next couple of days, so they went ahead and chopped them and bagged them. Yes. I'll give you a couple comments. One, you mentioned the difficult time with Sandy and the weather. Have you ever struggled to make hay in May in Ohio? It's not a perfect science, but in Ohio, statistically, October is our driest month. And if we can get them out August 1st and get lucky and catch a shower, about 75 days later, we're looking at the middle of October, typically. The other comment I'd make is the last drought we had, 4, 5, 6 years ago, have a fellow that grows a lot of timothy for horse customers. And that particular year, he had not nearly enough to go around. So he planted oats after wheat instead of double crop beans, and his horse customers were screaming for forage. And bless his heart, I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember making oats with the old square baler way back in the day. Well, he got the square baler out and he baled a bunch of square baled oats. And he gave a couple bales to a couple of his horse customers. They thought that was better than the Timothy hay. It was candy to them.